Welcome to the Dental and Mental Podcast. I'm Dr. Galen Dietrich.
I'm Dr. Davina Dietrich.
And we are going to be talking to you about the business and the mindset of dentistry.
We're back, my love. We're back.
Hi, missed you.
It's been a minute. Literally a minute. We are back with part 4, explaining essentially all the different pieces and steps.
Yes, this is
within
the
our
series of
6-month
Next
program. Yep. So our program Next is what we are talking about, which is going on. Well, it's basically going to be available for anyone and everyone as of now. So if this is the thing for you, now it's time to take the plunge.
That's right.
This part 4 is about assembling a team. So we've talked about identifying what is your next. We've talked about really doing an energy inventory, right? Like what's the modality for getting you where you need to go. We've talked about creating a roadmap and really stabilizing your practice and finding these things you might not have known were going on. And especially in terms of building up the reserves and capital to go where you need to go without a bunch of concern and worry. Now you're not going to get there alone.
Correct.
You're going to need a team.
We're talking about assembling the team. Now, a lot of people can jump to the idea of like, well, I already have a team. It doesn't mean that you have to dismantle your current team. It means that in order to up-level, in order for the identity of Next, you're going to need some support around that, which part of it is what we are, but it depends on really what you want to do, right? Mm-hmm. So if, say, you come to us and you're like, I want to do my own version of a podcast, fantastic. Do we need to start looking at who you need to have in your corner to be able to execute that, to be able to get it out, and for it to be sustainable? Mm-hmm. So we're going to be looking at all of the different requirements, whether it is your professional life, your personal life, anything extra that you need to add in to have the support that you need to get where you need to go.
Yeah, I think a big piece of what people have come to us for and why we designed this program specifically is that the hats that we're teaching, we've all worn. We've built podcasts. That's what you're watching right now, right? We've been on the cover of a multiplicity of articles and journals. We have taught at some of the most prestigious conferences as well as centers. We've owned practices. We have had partners. We've been associates. We've had associates, all those different things. And you can really think of that would be your next we have done, and we're not 70 years old.
Correct.
So there's something about the youthfulness and desire to accomplish these things while you really have the energy to go do that, right? And that's who we're looking for. We're looking for people who are like, yes, I want to go do that. You've done it, and I want to do it even faster, and I want to do it even better without as many mistakes, perhaps, right? We've made those. So assembling a team, something like the podcast, there were a lot of hiccups in like understanding what we needed and how we were going to do it, even the setup.
Right,
like
exactly.
How much research we have to put into that. And there was not one single video that I could find that said, this is how you set it up. There was so many problems. Right. It took me forever. So I think that's a big part of it, is just assembling that team to shorten the timeline.
Right, exactly. And so we talked about it a little bit at the beginning. If you are somebody, right, so one of the requirements is that your dentistry is stabilized. So if that is the case and you decide, yes, I'm good there, but what I really want to do is niche down, what does that look like? It's going to look like probably having a very different team, especially if you're going to niche down. And so we're going to start looking at what does your team currently do? Again, we've talked about energy inventory. So by that time, we're going to say, what is the way that you like to practice that is actually going to fuel you instead of drain you? Mm-hmm. And do we need different team members to be able to support you in transitioning into a niche style dentistry, right? Yeah. Do we need a different sort of team to be able to help you if you want to really go hard in marketing, if you want to create a brand that stands out from all of your competition? It really depends on what you've identified as your next. And then we start building the support that you need around you to be able to get you there. Because the idea isn't that you drop your personal life and focus so heavily on everything that has to do with Next, has to do with the business, that you don't get to make quality and lasting memories during 2025. Because remember, one of the lenses that we're really looking through is at the end of 2025, you want to say it's the year that I did what? You don't want to say that it's the year that you built something and sacrificed your health and your family and a lot of other things that are priority into having a full
I love that.
and happy life. So we want to make sure that is why we put looking at the practice and the numbers before assembling the team, because we do want to have the capital and the resources to invest in the support that you need going to the next level.
Yeah, it's the power of and. Right?
Yeah.
You get to build something brand new, challenge yourself in a way that excites you, maybe makes you a little bit scared, should be a bit of both. And you get to maintain your family life and deepen it. And you get to better and up-level your team, add to it perhaps, or refine it. And you get to focus on health and not give that up. You get to have all these different things, and that's really the design of this.
One of the people that you may decide that you want on your team is a personal trainer, right? Is somebody who's doing meal prep. I was having a conversation with my girlfriend last night, and I was telling her about our friends that have a house manager. And she is a very important part of their team and making their life work. They have multiple businesses and they have a house manager who does absolutely everything. So this is a person who is decluttering the kids' clothes, putting up Christmas decorations, right? Reboxing stuff, washing out trash carts, preparing meals, organizing multiple sports schedules. This is a person who is very important to their family system and structure and making all of their businesses and families work.
Yeah.
So
who's become like family to them.
Exactly. So that's another thing we get to really start playing around with. Where is strategic support that you need in order to make the thing that you've identified as your next sustainable, fun, cool? How do we look for this person? How do we find them? What do we want to pay them? And there's so much creativity and fun that happens with finding the right person, who then you're just like, oh my gosh, my life is so much better because I added this person.
Well, I think this is part of the reason why we also get to step into a very different version of ourselves. If you're anything like me, you probably heard that at some point. You know, like you're listening to this podcast and you're like a house manager. And my reaction 6, 7, 8 years ago would have been like, wow, like who needs one of those? Like I come from a family where you DIY everything. You know?
Yeah.
Like if there's a leak in the house, you fix it yourself. Just the way it is.
Right.
You would never pay someone to mow the lawn for you, right? And so there's a mindset that needs to sometimes be recalibrated. And that's not because everyone has to have this. It just might be that is actually what's required for you to accomplish your next. And if standing in the way of that is this mentality, a traditional mindset, or something that was passed down from parents or passed down from your environment, we got to work on that, because you will never accomplish the thing that you want unless you get the right team behind you. And it's shifting that into like, now I get to actually employ somebody else. Now I get to like let go of that and actually spend more time with the people that I actually really, really want to spend time with, and to bless somebody else by doing so. Like there's such a shift that can happen there, and it's not instant. It does take refining. It does take time. It takes being challenged. So that's a big part of what we get to do. And you're going to like the new you. You're going to like it.
Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind as I'm thinking of this that we've done with clients before is hiring somebody to support the person's spouse. Okay. So there's been occasions where, say, one person is the dentist, right? Their spouse is at home. And the spouse feels like they should be able to do everything. But when the other person comes home, it's like that person's still running around like crazy. It's like I'm still doing laundry and dishes and kids and whatever it is. So if that person is like, I really want my partner to be available to me when we get home, then the question becomes, okay, if that's really a desire that you have and something that you want to see happen, how can we get your partner at home some support so that they can kind of unwind? Right? So all of these things stack on each other. So we're identifying what you really want within the first month. We're doing an energy inventory. So you're like, I would really love my partner to be more available to me. We're looking at the business. Okay, what are the numbers? What do we need to be able to produce to make that happen? Who then do we need to hire? Okay, well, maybe we just need to hire somebody that is taking off all the laundry. Right? And it's not even for you. It's for your partner.
It can be the smallest changes like that sometimes. Like
That's exactly it.
You mentioned working with a coach and a mentor right now. And what a benefit it is. I mean, you've done a lot of this. You've done a lot of this for a decade. And each time is another up level for you. It's not like you've arrived.
Right.
And what's cool about that, I think, is that we start to realize more and more how inaccurate our thinking can be. And that it's like my numbers, right? It's like looking at a doctor's numbers. I get to see that and say, hey, have you looked at this, this, and this? Is that what you wanted? And they're like, I didn't know that I was spending that way. I didn't know that that's how much that cost. Well, would you like to make a change? Would you like that to be different? And a lot of interactions with the spouse or the way that your family runs, the way that your office runs, sometimes it's as simple as telling your team, you know what would really support me is if you guys did X, Y, or Z. You guys do these things so great, but what I actually really care about is this. And sometimes it's like just a big aha, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, I didn't know that that's what you just don't want us coming in late to the operatory. Like if I just did that, that would make you so much happier because time is so important to you, or the appearance of that. But this, and this don't matter as much to you. Like there's these very interesting shifts that we get to point out and bring a lot of peace and harmony to you if you'll just be willing.
Absolutely. I think even just being able to see what somebody else is experiencing, right? So from a coaching perspective, I get to see what somebody else is going through. So I'm like, okay, do you see this? And a lot of times it's like, no, I didn't see that, or I didn't know I could ask for that, right? You and I have experienced it in a different way within our marriage. Asking somebody a question is wild because you forget. You're so on autopilot and you just kind of like do your own thing. And I think we've talked about this on a podcast before, but you would come home and I would think that you would want me to talk to you.
Yeah.
And so I would be like, mindful of, do I have something interesting to say? What is it, something that I can entertain, dazzle, teach, something, yeah. Right? Give you some showmanship. And then when I asked you, do you actually like this? You were like, actually, I would really like silence when I come home. And I was like,
that sounds very bad, by the way.
No, it isn't.
So most
right?
people, they're probably like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
But it's so much easier to give somebody something when you know what they want to receive versus throwing spaghetti at the wall.
And think about that. Even what I just said, right? What I just said actually shows a bit of like my own mindset around that, which is it feels bad to tell you that. So how many things are happening that are like butting heads where this person doesn't really want to do this and this person doesn't really want to do this either, but you both are afraid to like do it the wrong way, you know?
Yeah.
And so you're trying to entertain me and I'm like, I've been entertaining patients all day. Every patient's different. I got to go put on a song and a dance. I got to whatever, right? To kind of like get this going the right direction and make them feel welcome. And by the time I've done that all day long, I'm exhausted. And you're like, I'm exhausted too from my day. I don't really want to put on a song and dance.
Yeah.
But we're not on the same page. And there's an honesty piece and a transparency of just who you really are. And so, this is actually one of the most foundational pieces. And I think this is where people are going to start to notice leapfrogs in the time frame.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer all on your shoulders. And the relief you feel when you get to focus on your zone of genius and what you love most, and you get to have an environment that supports that, and people are happy to support you that way, that's what they want to do. Oh, it's night and day.
So we have part 5 coming up, but what I think we should do is just include 4 and 5 together. Okay. Because part 5 is talking about relationships and boundaries. And assembling the team and relationships and boundaries go so well together that we're just going to jump into part 5 right now. Because I don't want to segment it because it's so good.
Okay.
Because another place where this shows up a lot is when you are in business with your spouse.
Okay, are we in part 5 now?
Yeah.
All right, we're in part 5.
Okay, so we're going to do a fusion of both of them because assembling the team and also relationships and boundaries really go hand in hand.
Yeah,
so we're going to call this part 4 and 5. Okay.
Love it.
And what I was going to say about that is we've worked with a lot of people who are in business together.
Yeah.
Husband and wife who are in business together, or parent-child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of dentists who are practicing that way, what does it actually look like to have completely different boundaries when you are in a personal relationship with this person?
And different personalities being unedited.
Yes. So in month 5, within next, we're going to be talking about relationships and boundaries. And part of it is this honesty piece. And it also has to do with building the team as well. So one of the things from a really practical perspective is Let's say you're an owner doc, you inherit a team, and somebody's been with you for a really long time. And they have gifts, talents, and abilities. You're just not sure what they are. So you keep them around, you keep them on payroll, you start growing really resentful. Now, one of the conversations that can happen around this is, does that person have gifts, talents, and abilities that you're not actually using? And can we move them into a different position?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then that really shifts how you feel about that person, because maybe we move them into a different position and now they're a rock star and you feel really good about that. The other thing it can bring up is, no, I've been hanging on to them for a really long time, and what I really need to do is let them go. And I'm afraid to do that. So we get to navigate those relationships, those boundaries as well, so that you can do it with somebody and still respect the human and also not go against what you know is right for yourself and for the business.
No, I love that. And this is, in the end, whether it's business or family, marriage, parenting, network, I mean, you just go through the line of all the things that you're trying to either accomplish or use to accomplish what you want and to have the experiences that you want in life. They come down to human interactions. And so the greater your skill set on that front, the farther you'll go and the faster you'll go there and the more efficiently you'll get there. And I think we skip past this a lot.
Absolutely.
You know, it's actually so poorly trained. I mean, it might as well be up there with like financial literacy, right? People do not know. We're not taught how to do anything financially, right? Like no one knows how to do their taxes.
Right.
No one.
Right.
Right. But no one also knows how to communicate clearly. They're not taught how to communicate their thought, their belief with respect towards the other person, but also with the sense of a boundary that says you'll come this far but no further. Like it's actually the kindest thing you can do to the other person, but it doesn't come naturally to us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the way that we've built this program is everything stacks on top of everything else. So if you have a team member who is energetically draining or boundaries that haven't been established in a personal relationship, say you're in business with your partner or your mom, dad, son, daughter, whatever it is, and we don't have these relationships properly established, we now have an energetic drain. And then we wonder why we can't accomplish our next, because nobody's actually looking at all of these pieces. And then we turn it into a story about why we can't have or do the thing, but we're looking in the wrong places. So that's why we are bringing all of these pieces together, because there are so many areas that we can clean up that will make massive shifts in your happiness, your productivity, your business, and what you're really able to accomplish.
I also think that it bears, there's some maybe perhaps a need to say this. As dentists, typically, we are eager to get the thing done. Like, put me in, coach. I want to shape some composite. I want to make the thing happen. And so when we're talking through these different facets of what the program is about, there's a certain sense in which a person might be hearing like a lot of this kind of mental and emotional and even spiritual things, relationship pieces. And they kind of start to ask like, well, what about the thing like the podcast I was going to make? Or what about the associate I was going to bring on? Well, I think it's easy to get lost that way. But the truth is you're kind of going through these different valleys, building the same thing. But every time you go through a new valley, it's like the valley of relationships and boundaries. Now you're going to build the thing, but you got to go through that. To get to the point where you want to go, there's all these different obstacles. And that's what we're essentially highlighting. How will you navigate those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You're on a journey. You're playing Mario. It's just another level. We're just talking about the levels. You're building the entire time. We're focusing on what you're going to be building because you and I are both we want to get the thing. That's the goal. That's the intention.
Well, nobody leaves coaching either. And they're like, oh, I actually, have really happy relationships, but I didn't get shit done. Like that.
I made no money.
Right. Yeah. Like that's just not.
Doesn't happen. But I think that's a concern that people have because we think so categorically as human beings, and we don't unify thoughts very well. That's a human nature. That's an inconsistency that we have. And so when we compartmentalize, we don't necessarily see that it all fuses together and actually this builds upon this. I love the word stack, like you just said. It does. That's the way it's designed. It's stacking these skill sets and abilities in different environments, which you absolutely will face. You will face.
And there's also no point in building something that feels like shit.
Well, you have to say more about that.
Okay, well, it's like, okay, if I want to start a podcast, okay, well, we can do that. We can do that in a very short amount of time, right? Say that's your next. Somebody comes to us and they're like, I want to build a podcast. That's actually relatively easy.
Yeah.
Right? Like we could show you how to do that.
Here's the list of gear you get.
Right. Like, yeah.
Here's how you get onto platforms.
We could show you how to do that. But if you do that and your office is losing money, your team is not in alignment with your vision, and you are having personal drama with your either romantic partner or your parent, right? Because you're in practice with them or whatever it is. Who gives a shit if you made a podcast, if your life is a dumpster fire, right? Like,
that's when people tend to be too transparent and gross about the stuff anyway, right? Where it's like, these things are happening. I guess I should talk about them. And then you actually start to lose authority, credibility, a little bit of the reputation. We've seen that happen too, where it's like, it just gets messy, right? You didn't have boundaries.
Oh yeah.
You didn't work through something and come to the other side and think through it and say, what would be of value to people? You just kind of like throw it all out there, and it's like, maybe put some clothes on.
Oh my gosh, I know when vulnerability is vulgar. Like I just no, I do. I judge it. Go and get yourself some private help. Stop showing up in my Instagram feed with your drama. Like I don't want it.
We don't want it.
No, we don't.
We don't want it.
I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people in general, we don't. Yeah.
No, but I think some people are like, oh, you're so brave. And it's like, no, bravery would be working through this in private and coming out on the other side with something that's helpful to people. Like, please don't use me as free therapy. Like, you will get an unfollow so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I do think that it's really true. You were talking about the client in the very, very beginning in part one and how they came with all these. And I thought actually the list was very mature. I loved it because
great.
it was all this particular client, this dentist, understood what really mattered, and they were very connected to that. And what was so wild was that they hit all these things, like you said, they weren't really even aware that they did. Right? They became so integral to who they were, almost autopilot. That when you looked back, they're like, "Oh my gosh, those are all real." But the wild thing was that, in the midst of being audited, in the midst of having some difficult like health things that had happened and deaths and all the rest,
yeah,
they were doubling and tripling their production.
Yes,
doing the kind of dentistry they thought they would never be able to do. That they'd taken other courses and continuums and had done one case, and now they're done 10, 12 cases. It was like it all gets to work together. There is an and to this. And that is not a exception to the rule. That is the rule.
Yeah.
That's how you come. That's why we're picky about who do we work with for 6 months.
Yep. And so that's why we are going to be spending, an entire month really talking about relationships and boundaries, because they affect everything, especially if you don't realize they do, right? So if you're around somebody, what are they costing you? And this is why we talk about energy. What are they costing you energetically? Mm-hmm. Is this a person on your team who you've had forever, but they leave you exhausted because of their drama, because they're incapable at doing their job? Like, what are they actually costing you? And we get to have those conversations. We get to evaluate that. We get to look at that. We get to go back to, is this a person that you want on your team? And we get to start having these really amazing conversations and leading you through hard conversations where, back to the point, we get to really respect the human, right? That's the key piece. We can have hard conversations if we can do it in a respectful way, in a compassionate way, and get through the other side. Because usually, and this is something that David Nagel told us a long time ago, and he has not been wrong about it. If it's not working for one person, it sure as shit is not working for the other person. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people will think maybe they're happy and I'm the one with a problem. And it just really isn't true. It's just that nobody has actually spoke up in a way where the other person can hear and receive it and come up with a solution around it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think a good way of kind of putting the nightcap on this particular part 5, is it's a two-way street. There are boundaries and relationships for us as well with who we bring into next and who we think it's for and what our expectations are for that group of people. I've got a couple myself. Tell me what yours are. What do you feel like a person who comes into this, there's a certain agreement that they're making with us, and with their vision for where we're going to go. What does that look like for you?
My non-negotiables are that you can hold two things at once. Now, what that means is you can feel scared, you can feel upset, you can deal with all the emotions as a business owner, as a practice owner, and you will take the next step. We get to hold two things at once.
I love that.
Right? And that's okay. We can do it afraid, we can do it scared, we can all of that, but you will take the action.
Yeah.
So that truly is a non-negotiable.
Yeah, I love that.
Like we said, you have to have clinical competency.
Mm-hmm.
We can't deal with those. That's just not what we're focused on.
Yeah.
And next is the clinical competency piece of it. And I think there has to be a real excitement about meeting the next version of yourself. Like you got to want to find out who that person is.
Yeah, there has to be a drive because they will be tested.
Yes, because shit will get hard. I remember this goal being stuck into my head by David. And the goal was really exciting, but I was also like, who do I have to be to get there? And I remember when he said, and this is when you and I went to David and we were like at our lowest of low.
Is this the monthly becoming, or
yes.
really becoming your monthly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I had never heard anything like that. That sounded so insane to me. And David Nagel said, what would happen if your yearly salary became your monthly?
Did you say celery or salary?
That's a good question.
I'm hoping my yearly salary.
I mean,
too.
I hope it was salary as in stacking cash.
Both green though, so we don't care.
That's true, but I want nothing to do with celery.
So good.
Just to clear that up, people, bring me stacks of cash, not stacks of produce.
Too good.
Okay, but I remember him saying that, like what would happen? Like the idea was insane to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, we were so green in all the ways in business. I mean, truly, and we had jobs, we didn't have businesses.
Right. So the idea was crazy to me. So at that point, I was making $100,000 a year at a dental school, right?
Yeah,
I was like $100,000 a year, and I was like, what? What if I made $100,000 in a month? And I remember at that moment, like adopting that goal for myself. Like that would be absolutely, like that would blow my mind from a bunch of different perspectives. Making what I would make an entire year into a month was absolutely insane. I was also really excited about the idea of doing it. And I was also scared, excited, whatever, all these mixed bag of emotions about who would I need to become to do that? Like what kind of person makes $100,000 in a month?
Well, and I think it harkens back to what I think was at part 2, but the idea of let's break down the goal into smaller parts. And so a person might say, okay, well, yeah, I could see that happening maybe in like 6 to 7 years. But you and I, when we heard that, given the fact that we also had the guidance and coaching, private coaching of someone like David, we could lean into his confidence. He's like, this is what you would do.
Yeah.
And it was so matter of fact that when we did our very first launch, we put heart and soul into it, everything, all the obstacles. You were pregnant throughout that entire thing. We were working out of a closet, right? We had sold everything, including workout equipment, cars. I'm getting dropped off by my wife at the juvenile detention center in a Prius. Like you go through the shame, you go through all your other friends are paying off loans and you're like, I'm racking up credit card debt, right? You go through all these things and every one of those points is like, you can stop here. And there's lots of times where we wanted to. And lots of times it was like, I think this is stupid. We should just go back to being dentists the way we usually were. And there's that coach who says, no, you said you're going to do this. Maintain your end of the agreement. And we did. And our very first launch replaced your salary.
Yeah.
In 1 month.
Yeah.
And I think that's when we realized, oh, we're not dreaming big enough.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We're selling ourselves short. So I would say from my end, there's a couple of things that come to mind, 3 in particular. The first is that I want people who are willing to dream bigger than what they think is possible.
Yeah.
Like you have to at least be willing to do that. Be willing to talk to us and say, what am I not seeing? And for us to be able to paint a bigger, badder, more ridiculous picture for you. And for you to be able to be like, all right, fuck it, let's go for it. Let's do it. I want that person.
I want that person to like the person who is like, I want to tell you something that I won't tell anybody else because it sounds so insane.
Like whispering it to you?
No, because it sounds so insane.
Yeah.
I just had this call with my coach and I was like, this is not something I'm actively working on, but this is something that I want. And I just want to tell you so that I just want you to hold it for me. She wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. She's like, yeah, like, let's go. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not, these are not harebrained, ridiculous idea. I'm going to be an astronaut. It's like, these are things within our industry, things that are certainly within the realm of possibility. It just seems impossible to you.
Right.
The second thing, it's a little more of a practical piece, but I want dentists that, I shouldn't say want, this is a non-negotiable. You are either fee for service or you're actively wanting to go fee for service. And there's a couple of reasons for that. There's nothing against you having a practice if you have a practice that is taking a bunch of insurance. But if that is not something that you want to get rid of, typically it's associated with a mindset that says I can't, because if I was to do that, I would lose all the relationships in my town, or I would not make it financially, or whatever else. And so it actually is a limited belief. And so you have to at least be willing to get rid of that. There's a group of people that just think differently when they're like, I don't like this. I'm tethered. I'm chained with this. I'm writing off way too much. I need to do something different. So if you're at least in a place where you're willing to hear what it would be like to go fee for service, that's important to me.
Okay.
The last thing is, again, something that David said, which I've always loved. I don't think there's anything I've ever heard that was more spot on. And it is, you have to have the mentality of wanting to be rich and not right.
Yeah.
Right? Because he always positioned that. He's like, you can either be rich or you can be right. Which one do you want to be? And it was in the context of, if you think you know better and you want to do it your way, you're not coachable. So I can't help you.
Oh, I remember
you
when
should coach yourself.
I remember when he didn't say this to us because I wouldn't say this to him. But when somebody was like arguing with him at the microphone, and he was like,
I was like shrinking into my chair. I was like, oh God.
They were like, well, I would do it like this or whatever. And he's like, I don't know how to make $1 million your way. I know how to make it my way. And I was like, oh.
And it doesn't seem like you know how to make $1 million your way.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. Because it was like this whole tangled mess. But yep. I was like, yeah, that's right. Like, I know how to do it my way.
Yep. And then the other context to that is, rich is not just money. It is, in fact, actually, once you've made money, you realize how much money is not really the thing that you're even after. It's the richness of your relationships, the integrity of them. We're talking about boundaries. And like, relationships improve with boundaries. Relationships improve with honesty. Relationships improve with both people being an unedited version of themselves. Same thing with team and everything else. It's just better.
Yeah.
That's a richness. And you don't get there by being right. You get there by willing to be rich, and which means you're willing to be wrong.
Yeah.
And you're willing to hear hard truths. So those are three things for me. There's a really practical one, obviously. And then there's a couple that I think are just more mentalities that I'm looking for.
Well, I love that. I love that you asked that question, because what better place to outline our boundaries than in the boundaries conversation.
That's awesome. We got one more part 6 to come.
Yep. And part 6 is going to be about, now that we've built all these incredible things, how are we going to sustain them?
Yeah. How has this become the new normal that we've now normalized? And now we're asking another question, what comes after that?
Yeah.
And that is where I think things they continue to get fun. Life stays interesting. And even, honestly, the people around you, when you're excited about stuff, you're fun to be around.
Right.
It's when you're like complaining all the time, or you just have a chip on your shoulder, or, there's a drudgery. Not that fun to be around. Truly, people can feel sad for you. They can feel pity for you. They can feel compassion for you. Those are all real things. But if you're stuck there day in and day out, and you have the same problem year after year, sorry, it's not a great place to be.
I agree. I was actually thinking about that the other day when I was thinking about what is the common thread that my friends share. Mm-hmm. My friends all are all really interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't get on phone calls with them and it's like, what are you doing today? What are you doing today? Right? It's like, oh, I did this and that, and guess what happened? They always have like stories to tell me. Mm-hmm. It's always exciting. Like, oh my gosh, what did you do? Tell me about that thing. There's always something happening. There is never boredom or complacency or dead silence on the phone. And I was just thinking about that because I hadn't connected that dot for all of my friends.
All of my friends golf. That's the common thread. But,
well, your friends aren't mine. Just kidding.
Amen.
Kidding.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into part 6. We'll see you guys in that one.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening and or watching the Dental and Mental podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or any others for that matter, feel free to tap that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple, Amazon, as well as Spotify. While you're there, why not leave us a review, up to 5 stars? And if you're on YouTube, go ahead and leave us a comment. Let us know what topic you want us to discuss next.
If you like what you heard today and you want to be involved in the Thrive world from coaching to courses or just to connect with us, go to thethrivedentist.com.